Today's video is a quilt tour. We're going to be going through all the different quilts that I've ever made. Now, I am not a quilting expert, but it's a fun hobby and I'm enjoying it. And I want to show you all the different ones I've made. So let's see, how many do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 quilts here in this pile, sorted from newest, leaf finished, most recently finished, all the way to my very first quilt here at the bottom. I think I'm going to start with the newest and work our way down to the oldest, because the newest ones, obviously I'm very excited about because I've been working hard and they're finished. I've been doing a lot of quilting this summer because being very pregnant, I haven't been able to be in the garden as much as I want, and sitting at a table quilting is something I can accomplish and get done. So let's just go through them. The very first, I want to say very first, but it's the most recently finished quilt was for my eldest son, and he picked out the colors and the pattern for this quilt. Now, obviously he had a little bit of guidance on what colors would go together, but he really did a nice job picking out all the colors. This one is very, very big. I'll show you the very first quilt I've ever made him when we get lower down on the stack, but the very first one was like a crib size quilt, and this one is closer to a queen. I don't remember the exact dimensions, but it's pretty big. I'm going to open them up the best I can here on this camera, and then I might do some other pictures and insert them of them fully open so you guys see them in a couple different angles. But this is the quilt. Now, I just think this is so pretty. And one thing I really like about this is the back, actually. If you look at the back, he picked out a blue gingham fabric that I just think is so cute and adorable. And I actually used the exact same gingham for my binding. And I think this is really fun. This was one of the first times, oh, there's another quilt I did, where I played around with a pattern on the binding of the quilt, because normally I typically lead towards like a solid, but I had leftover of this gingham, and so I went ahead and did that on all the binding as well, and I really like how it turned out. I feel like it kind of adds a cute little pop of color and kind of gives you a taste of what you're going to see when you flip it over to the back. As far as quilting this one together, it was a bit of a challenge for me, but I used a free motion foot on my sewing machine and kind of just went through and did random squiggles everywhere. It was fun when it worked. This one, I did run into a problem where I don't know if my bobbin was inserted wrong, but there was one time where I had an entire bobbin's worth of thread not working properly, and I got the little eyelash loops on the back side of the quilt, and I had to rip it all out and redo that section. Thankfully, it was only one bobbin's worth of thread, but it did take quite a while to get all that ripped out. I really like how, I don't know, just kind of like cozy the squiggles make this feel. It kind of gives it that kind of crinkly look. I haven't actually washed this one since I've quilted it yet, but that's what I did for quilting it. Some of the quilts I'm going to show you I have sent to a long armor, and they have quilted for me, and some I did myself. The only real pattern I should say that I've done myself is the squiggles, and there's no rhyme or reason to why the squiggles go the way they do. I just, you know, let the machine take me where it wanted to, and tried to do my best to make it fairly uniform across the whole quilt. But that is the most recent one I've done. This particular pattern, I think I just found it off of Instagram, and then I ordered the pattern, and all the fabric for this quilt I actually ordered from Etsy. One of my favorites is this orange gingham. I think that's really pretty. That was by Fabulism Design, I believe was the company. And I think some of these blues are chambray, so they feel really soft. I really like this one, and he's loving it too. So that is the one I have finished the most recently. The next one on the stack is actually a quilt for baby girl. So I got started quilting and did my very first quilt way back when I was in middle school. And then my second quilt ever was a baby quilt for my eldest child, which kind of started the tradition of making a quilt for every child when they're born. It's kind of a fun nesting project for me. It gives me something to do that's productive and like a task you can accomplish during pregnancy. And also, it's a beautiful heirloom I hope they will treasure. Now, with that being said, my middle child, this will be my fourth child. My middle child, I did not finish his quilt until he was over 1 year old. So it doesn't always get finished during pregnancy. So I'm very proud that I finished this one during pregnancy. And this one was actually one of the fastest quilts I've ever done. So this summer so far, 1, 2, 3. 3 of the quilts were done this summer. This quilt here is for baby girl though. It's really fun to finally be able to play around with flowers and some girly colors, because if you don't know, I have 3 boys. And so all the other quilts for the boys are, boy colors. But this one, I went all out and did flowers. The pattern for this quilt was called the Vintage Daisy. I believe I found it on Missouri Star Quilting, but I just love it. I think this is so pretty. All the different flowers are different color fabrics. Again, I'll insert more pictures and videos of them, but I mismatched all the different petals and their centers. And so every one is a little bit different. And I just think they all look so good together. And on the back, I went with the gingham. I did a yellow gingham. I actually had purchased different backing fabric initially for this quilt that had like a floral pattern all over it. But when I got it, I ordered it offline. When I got it in person, it just didn't look as beautiful as I hoped. And so it was kind of a last minute call to switch to the gingham, and I'm really glad I did. I have that same yellow gingham that's on the back, and like here, this one, in the center. And I think there might be a couple petals with that gingham as well, so it ties into the front. And then for the binding, I did a floral yellow that kind of coordinates very nicely with this gingham. This one I actually sent to a long armor, which I'm assuming you know a little basis about quilting if you're watching this video, but if you don't, a long armor is somebody who will do the quilt sandwiching and sewing for you. So when you make a quilt, you have your backing and then batting in the middle and then the front of your quilt. And they will put all that together and stitch a pretty pattern onto it. So the long armor I went to did this beautiful daisy all over. And there's some smaller daisies, some are bigger daisies, some have little swirls next to it. But I had to get a daisy pattern long-armed on here because obviously it is a daisy quilt. And I just love that she had this pattern in her computer because I think it just goes perfectly with the flowers and the quilt front. The long armor I went to, she has 2 different long arm machines in her basement. One is completely computerized, where you just plug in the pattern on the machine and then it does it for her, which is this one. Another one is manual, but so cool. I love this one. And I just hope baby girl's gonna love it too. And I have already started another flower quilt, which I'll show you at the end because it's not done yet, but it's fun playing with flowers. This quilt, next on the pile, the blue and white one, is one that I made for my own bed. Up until this point, a lot of these quilts were just for the kids, and I wanted to make one for me. The pattern of this quilt is the Hunter's Star. Open it up, and this is what this one looks like. This was definitely my most complicated quilt, and this was also the first time I ever followed a pattern. As we're getting down into the stacks, the last two I just showed you, I followed a pattern, but this one was the first time I actually followed a pattern and instructions, and it was a bit of a learning curve and a little more challenging for me because I was used to kind of winging it and coming up with my own pattern. But I will say I'm very, very proud of this quilt. I think the way it turned out was just lovely. I did run into a couple mistakes, trial and error as I was making this, but for the most part, most of my points where the corners connect are really good. And that's not something I've been able to do very well in the past. I'm very proud of that. This one I also sent to the long armor. It just has navy on the back, solid navy. It looks black in some photos, so hopefully it looks navy in the video, but this is just completely navy and white. And then on the edging, I do have the tiniest little bit of a navy pattern there. It almost looks a little bit like a snowflake to me. For the long armor, I sent this one to. The pattern we did all over the quilt is called Lily of the Valley. And I think it just looks so pretty. If you get up close, you see they're the little bell flowers, which I have some Lily of the Valley planted in my front garden beds next to the front door. And I just think they're so cute. And it just adds a little bit more of a feminine touch to this quilt without being too feminine. And on the back, you can really see that pattern a lot better because we went with the white thread and a solid navy back versus a patterned fabric. And I'm really happy with how this one turned out. And this one is also one of the biggest quilts I've made because I wanted it to be for our bed. So it's a little bit bigger than a queen. I believe the inside is a queen, and then I added this thicker border around the edge, so it's just ever so slightly bigger. The next one is for my youngest boy. This one, I had found some pictures kind of inspiration for this quilt and based the quilt off that. I did not go off of an exact pattern. I just picked a bunch of random fabrics from Etsy. That's where I buy a lot of my fabrics from. And made this one. This one is definitely more geometric in shape and kind of just fun. I'm hoping it's one that'll grow with my kids. I tried to keep that in mind when I was making quilts. For all the children, I want something that is not just baby quilt, but something that hopefully they can keep and treasure and use for the rest of their lives. It'll be good as a middle schooler, teenager, and an adult, and so forth. So this one, on the back, I did this really cute, I don't even know what you would call it. It's not a checkered because they're little tiny dots, but it has not exactly orange, but not exactly golden hue to it. I think it matches nicely with this kind of mustardy gold triangles on the front. And then I did a solid green binding, which I think looks nice. This one I also free motion quilted on my sewing machine. And I just have a domestic Janome sewing machine. And I did the squiggles. This was the first time I ever tried the squiggles was on this quilt. If you look on the colored blocks, you can kind of see, like, sometimes I took a sharp corner, but it looks nice once you hold it all up together. And I just squiggled all over it. So that is this quilt. And I think it looks really cute. I was kind of going for more of an Aztec-y, Southern America kind of Arizona vibes for this one. All right, the next one on the stack, we have 3 more left on this stack. This one is a twin size. So as we get farther back to my older quilts, for the kids anyway, they get smaller and smaller. This last one is a full, and then the most recent one I've made for a child is almost a queen. So they're getting bigger as we go. This one is a twin. Now, I think the pattern on this is so cute. I think I'd probably seen some pictures of quilts similar to this in the past. Typically, if I see a quilt I like on Pinterest or Instagram, I will save it to a folder. I have a folder of quilt inspiration and use those as ideas for making my quilts. But I did not follow a pattern on this, so I don't know anyone to reference as a quote for the pattern. I just winged it and came up with this one. But if you can't tell, it's a sunset in the middle and a mountain scene. So I really like how the sky kind of transitions into the ombre color. And one thing I did with this quilt, which I haven't done with any of the other quilts, is I embroidered some things on it. So if you look kind of closely, there's a moon up here in the corner and lots of stars. Now, the stars, it's kind of a fun story, I think, or at least I'm proud of it. The stars are a star map of his due date. And then to ice the cake, even make it better, my second child was born on his exact due date. I went into labor at 12:15 a.m. on his due date. So it worked out perfectly, because you never know if they're going to come on their exact due date or not. Typically they don't, but it worked out perfectly. So the stars on the top part of this quilt, I had printed off what all the constellations and stars looked like on his due date, and then I embroidered a portion of that night sky onto here. I went back and forth on whether or not I wanted to connect the constellations with lines like you see sometimes on like star maps, but I ultimately decided not to, and to keep it authentic to how the night sky actually looks, because when you look up at the sky, you don't see the lines obviously connecting stars together. But if you look closely, you can kind of make out some things like the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper and the different constellations. And then on my sewing machine, I have some decorative stitch options, and along the edge of this quilt, I did this decorative stitch around the border, which I think kind of also looks like a star. As far as quilting this one together, I did it on my domestic sewing machine, and I quilted in lines with the quilt as its lines. And then down here for the mountains, when I go at a diagonal, I quilted the lines at a diagonal down there. One thing that really bugged me about this quilt is I bought spray basting, which basically is like glue that you can spray between your sandwich layers to make your quilt sandwich, and it stained the quilt and it's never come out. So there are some like random dark patches. It shows up pretty good on the white and down here on the tan of the dirt from that spray basting. And I'm still a little bitter about it, obviously, because you spend so much time making a quilt top and pouring so much love and obviously time and money into it. And then you buy a product hoping it works, and then it ruins your quilt. Anyway, I'm never using spray basting again. I have pinned with safety pins all these other quilts because I learned my lesson. So this one, it's snuggly. He sleeps with it every night, as does my other children. So it's well loved, and he doesn't care that there's little splotches on it. That's just me. I care. But this one is also one that my original sewing machine broke on. I was halfway through making this quilt when my sewing machine broke. So my first sewing machine, it's kind of a fun little mini story. My first sewing machine I got for free. It was a Singer sewing machine. I always loved to read growing up. And when I was in middle school, our library did a summer reading contest where every book you read, you got to enter a ticket into different drawings. And I entered all my tickets into a Walmart gift card drawing for $100. And I won it. And I used that $100 to buy my very first sewing machine, which was white and blue. It was a Singer sewing machine. And it worked great while I was in middle school, a young girl learning how to sew. But it broke completely. I'm pretty sure there was like smoke too when I was making this quilt. So then I upgraded to a Janome sewing machine, which is the one I have now. So these last two quilts I'm going to show you were made on that first sewing machine I got as a middle schooler. Now, this next one is the last kids quilt. This is the very first kids quilt I've made, and I learned a lot of lessons on it. It is a little bit bigger than a crib size quilt. This one was for my eldest son. And it's just squares of different colored blue fabrics. And on the back is a blue star pattern. And this one I sewed with kind of just like a wavy stitch all the way down for the quilting. I learned some things when I was making this quilt, lessons learned, that I don't really like mixing different types of fabric together. I just went into Joann's, I think at the time, and picked out fabrics I liked for a baby quilt and put them all together. So like this blue one was, obviously it's old now, but this blue one was a really soft minky fabric next to a nursery cotton with little elephants on it. And then I also had some normal quilters cotton fabric solids. And then this one had shiny stars on it. They've all faded off now because it's been washed and well loved. But putting all those together, my points definitely didn't line up perfectly because I feel like when you're lining up a minky one with like a nursery cotton, the sewing machine, at least my old one, didn't want to keep those together. Like the minky one seemed to want to run faster than the cotton. Anyway, that was just my experience with it. But I still think it's cute and it's snuggly loved. The last quilt that I've made was my very first original quilt that I made way back in middle school. This quilt was one that I took, I'm pretty sure, all summer to make one summer. And as you can tell, it's the colors that a middle school girl would pick out. And as I was looking at this today, I realized I never actually quilted it together. It just has the backing and the quilt top sandwiched. So I might have to go through and play around with a new quilting technique, maybe something other than a squiggle, to piece this one all the way together. But it's just lots of little squares piece together of all different colors of lime green and purple and pink. And the back is this swirly purple color. Now, it also has a few mending repairs that need to happen. There's a couple holes in it from when I was a kid and had this one. I actually just got this one from my mom's house the other day when I was over there. It had been stored away in a closet for many years, and I wanted to make this video, so I figured I'd bring it out and show you guys, and maybe baby girl will like it too one day. Let me show you the quilt I have been working on for the last couple weeks. I've started another one because even though I can't be in the garden doing physical labor as much, I'm still somebody who likes to do things. And so quilting has been a good outlet for me to be able to actually do some things and like feel accomplished. So I have another quilt that I've been doing. This one, I've just finished all the blocks. It's going to be another daisy quilt. This particular one will have daisies, and then it has leaves and like a stem on the bottom of each of the flower blocks. So far, I have finished all of the flower blocks, and on the leaves, I messed up and I cut some things wrong, and I need more fabric for the leaves. So I'm waiting to get the fabric in the mail to finish this off, but I'm almost actually done with the quilt top. The flowers definitely took the longest part, and it should be pretty quick to finish it from here on out. The flowers definitely took the longest part, but I think the rest of the quilt will finish up pretty quickly. The inside, see if it'll show up, put my hand behind it. The inside flower petal, not flower petal, but the inside of the flower has little teeny tiny, they almost look like hearts if you can see that really up close. And then the pale robin's egg blue, I think is so lovely. One last thing I want to show you guys for quilts was a quilt my grandmother made. My grandmother was a quilter, and I have some of her quilts. I'm going to show you my favorite one. I never got to meet this particular grandmother, but it's nice that her memory lives on through the quilts and things she passed down. So this is one of my favorite ones that she made. My parents obviously have lots and lots of her quilts, and I think it is so pretty. And it's very me. I love the vintage flowers on it. It's got lots of little flower prints, and I will treasure this quilt forever. And that's what I really, hope for my quilts. And one of the reasons I took up quilting was my grandma inspired me, even though I never met her. But I feel like quilts are one of those heirloom pieces that you can pass down through the generations, and hopefully they will be loved and treasured for many, many years. Because it's definitely cheaper just to go out and buy a blanket. I didn't realize how expensive quilting was until I got into quilting, but you're not doing it just for the fact to have a blanket. It's something that you can pass down throughout the generations like this one. If you are a quilter, and if you're working on any quilts right now, I'd love to hear what you're working on. Thanks for watching. My name's Kara. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, y'all.